Welcome to another edition of Business Talk with me, Michael Avery, exclusively on Business Tech, the country's largest business news website with over 3 million unique views monthly. And the show has just garnered over 100,000 unique views in a little more than 3 weeks. So thank you for logging into the business online, where we are certainly aiming to excel, frankly. And I think this week's guest is also driven to excel. Basani Maluleke, the CEO of African Bank, one of the country's largest lenders. Basani, welcome. You were born in Soshanguve, which is north of Pretoria. You attended a local school there to become the first Black female CEO of a commercial bank in the country. So to say that the odds were stacked against you from the start might be the understatement of the year. Just tell me a little bit about your early years and what your dreams were as a child, because I see you studied law initially.
That's right. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, everything you said is right. My aspirations as a child was to become my father. I learned very quickly that being a girl was not going to be it wasn't going to work for me. Let me put it that way. I quickly understood what it meant to be a woman and the disadvantage that it ultimately bestowed. So my plan was for my father to start treating me like I was a boy, and I was going to study law and I was going to change the world. And then, of course, as life happens, right, I left my township school when I was 8. So I went to boarding school at St. Andrews. And you can imagine, right? I was like one of a handful of Black girls in a sea of white faces, could barely speak English, and was terrified, I think, for the first probably 18 months of my life there. But nonetheless, we kind of managed. I was there with my sister. We eventually found our feet and thrived, right? You eventually figure out what it is you need to do to be able to thrive, then you get there. And, I think when I look at my life, I really think those kinds of experiences where you're thrown into the deep end and you must figure it out. That's a theme of my life. It's constantly what has happened. And I think it just forces you to develop the skills to understand what people need to feel comfortable, to feel like you're not a threat in their environment, and to actually want to support you and to see you thrive. So in many ways, much as I was furious with my parents for, removing me from my comfortable environment in Soshanguve and thrusting me into an unknown world, I think with hindsight, it probably has put me in good stead to do different things.
Absolutely. It is those moments that shape an individual. And I think as a country, to bring that back to where we find ourselves currently, the entire country, business, NPOs, government was thrust into the unknown in March when we locked down for the first time ever. COVID hit. Take me back to that time, leading a bank that's going through something of a turnaround yourself and trying to put the days of Leon Kirkinnis firmly behind African Bank. What was going through your mind as a leader of an organization this size when you are watching the president say, right, we're going to go into a hard lockdown. Banking is an essential service. What were your initial thoughts?
So it was, we knew it was going to happen. So we'd seen what had been happening around the world. And based on that, we'd actually started to think through, what are we going to do when we go into lockdown? Unfortunately, when he announced it, we weren't quite ready. I think as many people were at that stage, still trying to figure out what to do. But I think like many other bankers, right, everybody just rallied. I think our IT team was placed under enormous pressure to find solutions to rent laptops, find 3G cards, figure out how to get people to work off-site, and also getting our call center to be able to work remotely. I mean, that was a feat that my mind is still blown by what these guys managed to achieve in the space of a week. So at the moment, we still have about a third of our workforce still working from home. All of our sales call center is still working from home. The majority of our collections call center has come back onto campus, but on average, people are doing so well. The majority of people working from home don't want to come back to the office, which I find quite horrifying. I'm in the office about 3 days a week, which I love. And I think that's going to have to be how we find our way through this, right? For people who want to work from home, I think it's important for us to create opportunities for them to at least see their colleagues once a month. So we're going to work on that.
Yeah.
And for those people who want to be in the office, it's about making sure that there's enough desks available for them to come in whenever they need to do that, until we all, get into some kind of normal, hopefully in the middle of next year.
It obviously presents a range of challenges to ensure that if you've got a remote workforce, that they're logging into a secure environment. Banks are highly regulated. Just take me through what that entailed, practically speaking, and whether or not you now have plans to downscale the HQ in Midrand as a result of all of this.
Yeah. So I think cybercrime is something that is very much on the agenda, and we're constantly monitoring our security posture and making sure that we have people hack our systems on an ongoing basis so we can identify where the weaknesses are. So it's an ongoing process of just trying to ensure that we are safe. At the moment, I really believe that our security team is doing a very good job. So fortunately, we own our campus, so there isn't very much room. We're not going to save very much in closing down aspects of it. At the moment, I still have a feeling that we have some way to go before we can say that this is the new normal. I'm still quite curious about what's going to happen when the vaccine eventually arrives and so on. And I think people... Look, I love to connect, which is why I'm back in the office, right?
Yeah.
I thrive on connecting with people. And I think through our time, we've always described humans as being social beings, right? As wanting to connect. And now that we're all apart, I don't know if, we are now rewriting who we are as human beings, or if we're taking a pause to reassess and evaluate and then come back to, the normal way of work. I think there's still a lot of water yet to flow.
And when you look at an organization, a big chunk of a CEO's job is capital allocation. Yes, I get that, but also culture and driving the culture throughout a business. It's very difficult to do that remotely. You can't bump into a colleague walking down a passageway or just pop your head into an office. And that has a big bearing on the organizational culture. And to your point, I'm like you. I'm a social creature. I'm a social animal. So the minute I could get back into studio, I grabbed the opportunity with both hands, even though we could broadcast from my living room or pretty much anywhere. And that's why I'm rather skeptical about those who say, right, this is the new normal and we're never going to return back to the office. Probably more a blended approach. When we look at how companies and individuals are going to adapt to this moving forward, how do you see African banks' role within this gradual return to whatever this new normal looks like? What are you mapping out as some scenarios, and how do you see the bank slotting into that?
So it's interesting. So I think where our people are concerned, we've actually just recently launched an app called the Evolve app. And it's our change app. And the intention there is we put our strategy on there, and over time, we're going to start putting on the objectives that each member of our team, of the African bank community, must work towards. So that is where you go to find out what is new in the bank, what is your role in it, and what does it mean in terms of the future of the bank. It's a great app, and we're really excited about it. The second app that we launched, which was about 12 months ago now, is the training app. So as you know, we're a bank and we're very compliance driven. And as a result, there's always compliance training. So they've got that training on their phones when they need it. And we're also driving a lot of change around our culture. So we know that in the future, well, not even in the future, right now, the success of an organization is going to be determined by the velocity of learning. So how quickly can you learn, adapt, adjust, and deliver new products, services, respond differently to customers. So we're trying to make sure that we have the tools at hand to give to our people so that they're able to learn this new culture and to upskill themselves so that they remain relevant. So we're quite excited about that, and we're giving them access to tools like Udemy. So they have access to different training and can make sure that they take control of their own careers and so on. Then as far as our customers are concerned, we started a digital journey about 3 years ago, so in 2017. And that was to re-platform our organization and to launch our Omni platform. So we actually just finished that journey now in 2020, right? A few weeks ago, in fact. So it's been a long journey of, literally changing the technology platform of the organization. We now have a much more modular platform. We've got open APIs to enable us to partner with fintechs or with other organizations. Our entire workforce in the branches as well as in our contact center can see exactly what a customer sees on their app or on their online platform, which means when you walk into your branch or you walk into the call center, you're not having to start from scratch. Whoever's talking to you can see exactly what you've been doing over a journey, and in a way, you make sure that you get away from this idea of silos, and you enable people to work much more cohesively. So we're very excited about it. Obviously, there's still some way to go in terms of making sure that we all adapt to this new way of working. Because it's one thing to launch the tech, right?
Absolutely.
a different thing. To make sure that the change is adapted. So I'm very excited about that for our customers. And what we've seen as well over the last year is that about the number of app downloads has gone up by about 500%. So we've got more people. Extraordinary, right? And I'll also be honest and say I think a lot of it was driven by COVID. So, you have more people operating on our digital channels, but what also is interesting is that the footfall into our branches has gone back to pre-COVID levels. So, for me, that just says people want that, people want choice. They want a hybrid model. And I think it's up to us to make sure that we're able to continue to deliver that.
Absolutely. I'm so pleased to hear you talking about getting rid of silos, because I often think the word silo was invented in a bank. You pick up the phone and you've got a credit card issue and you maybe want to talk about a mortgage problem. You've got to go all the way back from the first step again. And it doesn't seem seamless. And I think there were legacy issues and legacy spaghetti IT issues that came into play. So fantastic to hear that you spent this last 3 years replatforming the business. When you talk about a platform, what do you see as the bank's competitive advantage? Because there's a lot of talk right now, Basani, of the competitors coming not from other banks, but from the big tech firms, these big platforms that we know already. What do you see as the bank's core advantage when you fend off some of these new competitors?
So one of the things we're very proud of, Michael, is the fact that in this last year, we were rated as the #1 bank for customer satisfaction by SACSI. Right, so there's a competition across all the banks, and we were seen as #1. Secondly, we have continued to see our NPS improve, which means that our customers are getting improving service all the time across all our channels, including our digital channels. In fact, the NPS on our digital platforms has doubled in the last 12 months. And that's due to all the refinements we've been doing and so on to make sure that the platform is more user-friendly. So when I think about the digital competitors, you're talking about Apple, Google, Facebook, etc., right? All of these platforms that people love because they are so intuitive. One of the things that I enjoy when I think about Google is this notion that they have more information about me than my mother has or my best friend has. They know me better, which is true, right? Which is why when I type something in, they're able to finish my thought because they know exactly what I'm looking for and what was important to me. And that's all about user experience. It's all about data. It's all about using data smartly. So what we've also been doing in the last 24 months is that we've started a data academy. And our first cohort of data scientists graduated at the end of last year and joined the business in January. And our second cohort graduated in September. So they joined us, no, I think they graduated in June, my mistake, and joined us shortly thereafter. So we are growing our own, our own team of data scientists that will help us to use data more smartly, to access data from different sources, and in that way to transform the organization to being a lot more tech-centric.
It speaks to one of the big challenges in South Africa, the fact that on the one hand, we have this record high unemployment. On the other hand, we have this demand for digital skills. So I often think we've got more of a skills crisis in South Africa than an unemployment crisis. If we could generate the right skills, we would be able to mop up a lot of those unemployed if they had the right skills. So I'd like to find out a little bit more about how you've approached this data academy inside the bank. Did you go internally to say, right, we're going to build this ourselves? Have you partnered with one of the other providers out there? Just tell me a little bit more about the academy.
It's such an exciting partnership. So we partnered with Explore Academy. They're based in Cape Town. And they had been for a number of years identifying people sometimes you don't even have a matric, up to people who would have a PhD, but they would be testing for the right aptitude to become a data scientist. And then they would put all of those people through various types of training, learning how to work with Python or SAS or various other technology platforms to enable them to, develop and grow towards becoming data scientists. What I really liked about Explore was that, they were not differentiating between people based on how much education they had, but purely on aptitude. And I wonder if that has to be how we start to operate, in terms of the education environment or the education ecosystem in South Africa. I mean, when I think about just how dire our education system is, right? We know that it's been deteriorating over many years. The quality of our education has been deteriorating. I do think we're going to have to find new ways of teaching people, of upskilling people, so that we can have those people available to help us grow our businesses.
Absolutely, and it's another big revealer that COVID. I mean, the COVID crisis revealed a lot about how flexible we can be. It revealed our adaptability, our speed, our agility, but it also revealed how we can do things differently. And in education, in particular, it showed that when we couldn't go and send our children to school, those who were fortunate enough could at least homeschool with online learning. And it also, once again, it raised that inequality question in the country, because so many couldn't access that kind of digital online learning space because we just haven't built the infrastructure in so many of our communities. On that note, what do you see as the big lessons, be it societal or even for African Bank, that you can take from this pandemic that will hopefully help us improve and build a better South Africa into the future?
Yeah. So from an African Bank perspective, I think my biggest lesson was around how much people value their autonomy. When I talk to people across the bank about whether they want to come back to the office, and people are just resolute that they don't actually need to be in the office to do what they do, and yet they produce stellar work. They talk to me about how being home and being able to focus and be around the people you love makes such a difference. And yet they remain accountable, and they actually deliver on what they need to and surpass expectations even. So, I suppose I always knew that autonomy was important. I'm the CEO, so obviously the last thing I want is anyone telling me what to do. But certainly, I think, many of us operate at our best when we are allowed to draw from different areas for inspiration and can do our best work. So I think that's really important. I think for the country is this idea about collaboration, right? So when lockdown started, you had Business for South Africa pulling together different people from different organizations to try and build a recovery plan. There was a lot of momentum across the business space around saying, what do we need to do to make our country work? How do we take responsibility for the future of this beast that has really been a laggard for so long? So I really, and that was beautiful, right? I mean, the mere idea of it is extraordinary. But I mean, I think, if we can keep that energy going, and that level of just wanting to collaborate and build the country, I think we can do extraordinary things.
What is your view on the future of the country? It's the hot topic at the moment. Another couple of ratings downgrades, largely priced in by the market. If you look at the way the currency's responded, it's more reacting to what's going on in the US political scene than our own political scene at the moment. But there is a sense that while reform momentum is picking up, perhaps we need a bit more urgency. What is your sense of the scale and the pace and the trajectory of reform in South Africa?
I mean, look, I was listening to Bloomberg the other day, and they were commenting on the president's speech on the recovery plan. And they were like, look, it's very good. He's saying all the right things, right? He really rang that bell around implementation. So we know that we are very long on plans. I mean, we definitely have more than enough plans, but definitely short on execution. And so he's saying the right things, but there definitely isn't a plan around how we're going to execute. And I think that's the worry. And, in many ways, I'm hoping that we can figure out how to get the private sector much more involved in the execution. if they can identify all these infrastructure projects, and then identify people in the private sector to partner with government to get these things to fruition, I think then we can do some really special things. And then, of course, I do think that the president's mind is very focused at the moment on this whole corruption story. I can imagine that for him it's an all-consuming project because it is so ingrained in the ANC, or is so closely correlated with the ANC and the country. So in many ways, I'm kind of hoping he'll fix that, and then the private sector can get much more involved in helping to rebuild the economy.
There is so much skill, goodwill, desire, and capital sitting on the sidelines waiting to do exactly that. But I think you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to recalibrating the ethics of the state, because the private sector just cannot do business where there is potential risk, be it reputational or otherwise, at a local government level, for example, on an IT contract, where you are potentially dealing with a corrupt counterparty. So when he gets that right, I have a feeling that we really are going to see the snowball of reform really pick up from there. Basani, thank you so much, as always, for sharing your time. We're going to have to leave it there.
Thank you very much, Michael.
That was Basani Maluleke, the CEO of African Bank, with some fantastic insights here on Business Talk, only on Business Tech.